Well, this is a turn up for the books because I was wondering when a national newspaper would actually start to pay attention to the fact that, well, a lot of these local newspapers, all these local journalists, when they are trying to engage with their now reform run councils, they're not getting anything at all. And in many cases, people don't even know what's going on at their local town hall if it's not in their local newspapers. And it is how always has been an important function of how important local journalism is that has allowed people to find out what has been going on in their town halls. This is why local journalism is really important. It's why you should support your local newspaper because of that fact. And now, a lot of media outlets are now starting to look and think, yeah, a reform government might actually happen. Is it actually going to be any good? And how are they going to treat us if we start we start to scrutinize them? Well, you're starting to see this. I think now, Farage, quite frankly, I think the media is starting to turn against Reform UK. I think we are starting to see that. I think they are now starting to go, oh, well, this guy actually might be in charge. Maybe we should actually, question some of his policies or things like that. You are slowly but surely starting to see that. And I think depending how next May's local election goes, you could see that maybe increase even more. But we're going to have a look at what a major newspaper has looked at in horror and gone, oh, these reform councils are like completely cutting off all media contact. How's that going to work for us? That's like our business model. So let's find out a bit, at least, of looking through the eyes of a big mainstream newspaper when it looks at horror at the fact that local newspapers are being cut off from engaging in politics, looking at, speaking to politicians, and that simple matter of access. Because all of a sudden, they're like, well, hold on. If we lose this access, that's going to affect our business model. So all of a sudden, things are starting to happen on that front, but slowly but surely, one step at a time, as they say. So, as always, thank you very much to all those people who, by the way, who do help and support the channel. Please do remember to click on the like, share, and of course the subscribe button down below. Thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. And of course, don't forget to ring the bell as well so you get notifications of when we go live. Down below, there's a Patreon page, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link where you can buy me a coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there is the YouTube membership down below. And of course, up here we have the QR code, which will take you straight to the Patreon page. So, as always, thank you very much for all the support you guys show. And of course, let's crack on then over to this, covering this from the Times, indeed. Covering this. Reform UK now accused of Trumpian wall of silence towards local press. And of course, you see Brom here, who was given the boot. We still don't know the reason why. And bear in mind, I don't know if Brom will ever see this. But Brom, you are young enough to really recover from this. In fact, you could probably do the most epic revenge on Reform UK because you don't owe them any allegiance. They've given you the boot. If you want to know how you can do that, and I'm generally serious about this, Brom, if you want to get your revenge on Reform UK and completely and absolutely humiliate them and come out of this whole situation smelling like roses and not have people look at you for the rest of your life going, oh yeah, that's the guy who ran for reform, get in contact. I'm serious about that. I'm very serious about that. But anyway, back to this. So, Two local newspapers have now joined a growing list of publications claiming that Reform UK councillors are now stonewalling their journalists with Trumpian tactics as the Nottingham Post now launches legal action against its council leaders' boycott. Love the fact that they've picked up on this. Journalists now in other reform-led areas have also alleged that councillors for the party, which claims to be the champion of free speech, regularly now ignores requests for comment. The Leicester Gazette, the independent online publication, which has now made fresh claims alongside the Kent Current, said that Reform had now refused to engage with its journalists and branded its stories as fake news after the paper investigated Joseph Brom, the then deputy council leader, over now a controversial social media posts. So there is a lot of stuff that can be said about that. And we still, of course, don't know the reason for why Brom got given the boot. There's the whole thing about him being investigated by the Electoral Commission for handing out ice creams on election day. There's claims that he was apparently bullying other younger councillors. But now, at a council meeting, a Conservative councillor stood up and said that Brom had come to him because the leader, Dan Harrison, had been bullying him. There's so much going on here. So much going on here. And I think if Brom actually comes out and gives the real story of what went on, I think he can actually maybe salvage his reputation, honestly. But back to this. So, Rhys Everquill, the reporter now for a community-led Leicester Gazette, also said that recent divisions by Reform UK councillors now to stonewall journalists from the Leicester Gazette shows that they have now very little commitment to actually transparency and accountability. What a surprise. Their now refusal to engage with the press not only silences critical voices, but also undermines the very democratic principles that they now claim to uphold. This repeated behaviour raises very serious concerns about what might be now heading from the public that they serve. A very healthy local democracy, councillors must now be willing to face scrutiny and answer the tough questions, rather than now retreating into silence. Brom, of course, did not respond to the paper's request for comments, but later said he, quote, won't be engaging with fake news or political smears. The complaints, of course, which the National Union of Journalists called extremely worrying, came the day after a law firm representing the Nottingham Post, which served Nottingham County Council's legal letter demanding it withdraw the ban on journalists. Oh boy. I want to do an update on this as well at some point, because I think they've withdrawn this. I think the council has withdrawn that. They've withdrawn this ban because they don't want this decision and like the decision-making process, I think, being made public. So I think that will get very embarrassing for them very quickly. The paper, of course, claimed that an article about local government reorganisation prompted McBurton, the council leader, then to bar his councillors from speaking to reporters, and then denied the press releases and even invitations to events. The Post now believes that the ban is in breach of local government regulations, Article 10 of the European Human Rights Regulation in relation now to freedom of expression and the council's own code of conduct. Barton, of course, maintained that there was no ban on councillors speaking to journalists, but he said he had now personally chosen not to engage with the paper, which even in itself is a damning decision if you are not going to personally engage it. But we'll see how this goes. I think there's no way they are going to go to court on this. I think they will undo the ban at some point. Emily Price, the editor of the Nation.Community, has said that Reform are, of course, refusing to speak to its journalists, which is now a move that she described as completely undemocratic Donald Trump-style wall of silence in Wales. Ed Jennings, the editor of the Kent Current, the independent website launched in April, said that his relationship with the party had started very positively with sit-down interviews with the county council leader, Lyndon Carwell. He said he soon stopped receiving responses from any of the Reform councillors and sometimes the communications team itself. He said, once they took over, we've had absolutely nothing from them, he said. It's not even, we're not talking to you, we're just getting nothing. He said that the press office had been at least more responsive, but ignored anything slightly challenging, of course, about the council. It wouldn't surprise me, again, if that has happened, because they can send down word and said, yeah, any questions, anything like that, we're not going to respond to it. Anything, questions coming in, challenging our decisions, anything like that, we're not gonna accept it. We're not going to respond to it. He said, of course, we are very happy to, of course, give them a fair hearing, and we, of course, want their quotes, but we do get nothing, he added. Councillors don't owe us anything or have to respond, but it is frustrating from a kind of journalism point of view. It makes us feel like we can't do our job properly. I'm already very conscious that we might seem like we're just now kicking reform, but it's making it worse by the fact that they will never give us any kind of response. So you've got to look at that from, as he said, from a journalistic point of view. Oh, they're constantly kicking reform. But here's the thing. They go to reform and say, hey, we're doing this story about something that went on a council meeting or this decision you've made. Do you want to comment? And of course, then they don't respond. How does that then look? If you look at it purely from a journalistic point of view, that's bad. However, I will go on to say this from a journalistic point of view, even if they're not responding, makes them look bad, not the journalist. Other publications have only reported at least some minor communications issues with reform councillors. They've blamed it on the inexperienced councillors still trying to learn the press role in local government. Seamus Dooley, the Assistant General Secretary of the National Union of Journalists, said, in recent years, the NGOA has now been concerned in a reduction now of local government coverage in many areas. The introduction of the Local Democracy Reporting Service scheme sought to address now that imbalance. Against the backdrop of the reported attitude of reform, this is, of course, extremely worrying. Which, again, is very true. Our members in local press do play a very vital role in upholding democracy, and reform at the local and national level must now recognise that function. The growing hostility towards the media amongst many politicians in the UK and across the globe is, of course, very deep concern. A Reform UK spokesperson said about this, the reform engages far and wide with local media and journalists. Additionally, Nigel Farage answers more questions from the media every week than any other party leader. But just as journalists are now fully aware of their rights to, of course, criticise our elected officials, reform councillors are completely justified in criticising unfair and unbalanced coverage. This is the basis now for a healthy functioning democracy. But is that actually fair and justified criticism? No, because we've covered a lot of the crazy stuff that reform have been up to. And their response is, oh, that's just fake news. I'm not going to engage with you because you're just being biased. The Nottinghamshire Live got it 100% right when one of their own journalists responded to Lee Anderson and said, Lee Anderson doesn't want us covering him unless it's in a positive way. But that's not how journalism works, not how press works. You don't go to, Reform's party and play nice. That's not what I would say a good functioning, democracy is. You go in there and you ask the hard questions, even if the party host doesn't necessarily like those hard questions. And their response has been to now not invite them to the party. But anyway, back to this. Dan Harrison, the leader of Leicester County Council, said the administration remained, quote, committed to transparency and the values of local media, and that would therefore now be reaching out to the Gazette. Carlin said that since the being elected in May, I've gone above and beyond to try and accommodate as many interviews and requests as possible, and even tried to respond to media inquiries. I constantly now encourage my cabinet members to do the same. I very much doubt it, to be honest. I think we are going to be seeing this. This is a pattern that has formed very, very clearly. They have been told repeatedly from what we've heard from that unit down in London, do not engage with the local press. Why? All goes back. Why do you only ever see Nigel Farage out in front of cameras? If you were, an alien coming from a planet, you must somehow think that Nigel Farage must be like this one person party. And that was always and always has been the case. Even back in the UKIP days, Farage would never, ever, ever let anyone else in the spotlight. And now they have a really iron grip over their councillors. We know the first thing that came out, the Reform UK councillors have even said this as well. Don't engage with the press. We are not engaging with the press. Do not engage with the press. So, will this continue? I think very much so. I think very, very much so this will continue. Will it get worse? Probably. Will it get better? We'll see. But I don't see this getting better. I do not see this getting better at all. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.